furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.
For those who don't know, Bronies are the adult male fans of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. They come in for a lot of flack for their interest in what is, for all intents and purposes, a show aimed at young girls. The show itself has a subtle sophistication that will most likely go over the heads of most young viewers. Like all good stories aimed at children, there's something to appeal to adults as well. So it's not a huge mystery why there might be a few adult fans for the show. It's girly, yes, but it's also sweet, kind, and positive, and has a remarkably well-conceived characterization and plotting. However, despite all of that, Bronies still come in for a lot of shit. A lot. In an article on the feature-length animated My Little Pony movie, Equestria Girls, the Toronto Sun interviews one Jennifer Gilbert. Miss Gilbert, a suburban mother and thus obviously the arbiter of what is acceptable in human interaction, explains that she feels uncomfortable in a theater full of grown men watching a children's show. Uncomfortable. Another woman on YouTube comment thread opines that the movie adaptation is a Bronies wet dream, alluding to the stereotyping of Bronies as only having a sexual interest in the show. Sexualization. In fact, commentator after commentator on YouTube vids, Reddit forums, article comment sections concludes that Bronies are fags, pedophiles, and creeps. Now let's set Brony shaming aside for a moment. In January of 1993, a news conference was held in Pasadena, California. At that news conference, reporters were informed by Sheila Cole of the California Women's Law Center that a study done at Virginia's Old Dominion University 3 years before indicated that hospital admissions for domestic violence rose 40% after football games in which the Washington Redskins won. Apparently, men were beating their wives in a monstrous feud brought on by beer, football, potato chips, and the bitter regret of their home team losing a game. This lurid factoid sparked an avalanche of hysteria that still pops up today. It's, of course, completely false. There's no association with the Super Bowl and wife beating. And as far as anyone knows, being a male football fan isn't actually a marker of being a wife beater. The latest shame craze around the Super Bowl is, of course, sex trafficking. All the signs are in that in 10 years it'll be discovered to be a complete hoax as well. Men who like football don't lack for masculinity in the popular imagination, yet male fans of that pastime come in for their share of shame, guilt, sexualization, and demonization. Now let's set the Super Bowl aside for a moment. In 1674, several thousands of the buxom good women of London drafted a petition to coffee houses. This petition was called the Women's Petition Against Coffee. In it, women accused men, including their husbands, who whiled away the hours chatting over a cup of brew, of being impotent, frivolous, and effeminate. In particular, they demanded the closure of coffee houses because imbibing Joe apparently made Joe incapable of doing his duty to king and country. To quote the buxom good women, quote, "We find them not capable of performing those devotions which their duty and our expectations exact." End quote. In other words, men shouldn't be able to drink coffee because coffee left them unable to perform in the sack. Talk about sexual entitlement. Now, feminists will say that Brony shaming is a symptom of what they call xenophobia, essentially their theory that we hold girly things in lower esteem than boy-y things. However, we also shame men for liking traditionally masculine pursuits, or just neutral ones. We shame Bronies because My Little Pony is feminine, sports fan because sports are macho, and in the past, coffee drinkers because coffee is caffeinated. Anyway, the point is that the only common denominator is that these men are choosing to do what they want with their own time. It isn't the femininity of Bronies, the masculinity of sports fans, or the caffeination of coffee drinkers that's the issue. No matter what pastime, someone will figure out a way to shame men for it. It's the fact that men aren't being useful. And that's blasphemy. Welcome to this week's episode of Honey Badger Radio. I'm your host, Allison Keenan, and with me today is Stella Burton and Diana Davidson, who will hopefully remain with us as her power is cutting in and out. Karen, unfortunately, won't be able to join us tonight as she is busy mudding walls or slapping down tile or doing something with saws. She's dead to us now. I'm passing the mic over to Della. to bring us the latest developments in community news. Della.
In the feminist tradition of substituting... Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In the feminist tradition of substituting censorship for debate, a copyright violation complaint citing the Digital Copyright Millennium Act, or DMCA, has been filed against Men's Issues vlogger Victor Zen in response to his criticism of a feminist vlogger's work. As a result of the complaint, the video has been taken down and Victor Zen can no longer upload anything over 15 minutes long to his channel. A similar attack was made against Karen Strawn's channel last year in an apparent attempt to gain her personal information, including home address. In this case, however, the goal appears to be silencing Victor Zen's criticism of YouTube channel Miriam Talks. To counter this, several other men's issues vloggers have hosted mirrors of the targeted video and another video which he has been unable to load due to its length. Interview with Nicholas Aliverdian is the title of that one. I'm actually hosting that on my channel as well. Anyone wishing to host mirrors of either of these can find links to them in the low bar of Victor Zen's video Copyright Strike Response. And back to you, Allison.
Thanks for that update, Della. Yep, the feminists are at it again. DMCA violations abound. I'd like to have a moment of silence right now for the passing of Nelson Mandela. He was a great man who showed us all how to endure adversity and at the end seek justice rather than vengeance. Godspeed, Mr. Mandela. Before we get this party started, I'd like to announce our new Honey Badger store. It can be found at cathypress.com/honeybadgerbrigade or can be accessed through our website at honeybadgerbrigade.com. It's got Honey Badger themed items as well as being the new home of our rape culture mascot, Mr. Tentacles. Mr. Tentacles is a tentacle monster who loves surprises, and he hopes you love them too. After we do the opening round robin, we'll be taking questions. The call-in number is 1-310-388-9709. That's 1-310-388-9709. Please remain on topic. That topic is shaming of men's pastimes, Bronies, and also feminist concept of femophobia to try to encapsulate what really can't be encapsulated by femophobia. Now let's get this discussion rolling. Della, did you have anything to add?
I just wanted to point out, and I'm sure there's probably plenty of other people who are able to point the same thing out. Most of the men I know who are dads watch cartoons with their kids. You know, I mean, my dad always watched cartoons with me, and a lot of them have daughters, watch little girls' cartoons with their daughters. You know, my husband watched little girls' cartoons with his daughters, and I watched little boys' cartoons with my son. Nobody has ever said anything about us doing that. I don't really see a whole lot of difference between enjoying a children's television show when there are children there and enjoying a children's television show because it's a good show. The idea that it's being demonized or shamed is such an obvious attack on masculinity that it's ridiculous. That they have to stretch so far as to delve into, well, men can't watch what men want to watch. Men can't paint models. Men can't play football. Men can't watch football. Men can't enjoy children's shows. And then at the same time turn around and claim that it's anti-woman to attack everything men do. It is beyond imagining as far as dishonesty goes. It gets to the point of being so hypocritical that you cannot understand how they can't see it as hypocritical themselves.
I have to admit, when the topic Bronies came up, I had to do a bit of research on what that meant because I hadn't heard of them before. So I ended up watching a about hour and a half long documentary on it, and they tracked the history of all the different generations of My Little Pony leading up to the fourth generation. And it was interesting because 4chan came into the discussion, which is seems to me to be deeply connected to how this became such a massive movement. And it was actually like a flame war going on between people that were writing on the comic cartoon segment, and then they crossed over into the B segment, and they were spamming threads with My Little Pony, memes and stuff like that. And then, so it's almost like they were trolling each other. And I think that's how it ended up generating like such a huge audience so fast. So, just another way that 4chan shows the power of internet communities. But after that, I looked into, feminist reactions to it. And interestingly, before the whole Brony thing started, there was feminist criticism of the show itself. So they called it homophobic, racist, and something else. It ended up being called ableist at one point. So they were criticizing it from a feminist point of view, which is one of the things that women's studies has pushed upon our culture. You can't have anything that's out there in space in the world without a feminist coming in and analyzing it in relation to its sexism or its masculine or feminine appeal. And so, as a result of that, all the guys that have taken an interest in it have been put on the spot to explain themselves sexually. And in Slate, there was something written. It ends with, Bronies have expressed a strong interest in seeing the ponies in sexy, humanized forms. If you doubt this, I dare you to search for My Little Pony porn on Google, which probably ends up at 4chan, because, if it exists, there's porn of it. And it seems Hasbro has given them exactly what they want. If there's any danger of the Brony trend dying off anytime soon, turning the ponies into imitation sexy anime characters delayed that potential decline. A few mad moms is an easy price to pay when you consider the huge profits Hasbro will rake in with this move. Because the Bronies have been embraced by the creators of the show, they're saying that the creators are also embracing what must be masculine pornography, that will obviously result from any attraction to anything just because they're guys. So it's an interesting evolution of what could be a simple conversation about how something like, any kind of a meme takes off, creates a subculture. There's lots of subcultures that exist, and that's really all I see this as. But instead, because of feminism, and they're teaching, all these women to look at things from a sexist point of view, then all of a sudden we have to look at Bronies as not just a subculture, but as, a subculture that has an agenda.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't just see this happening with Bronies. You see it happening with, did I get that right, Bronies?
I think it's a combination of bro and ponies, so Bronies would be how I'd say it.
Yeah. I'm notorious for mispronouncing stuff, but you see this not just with this particular subculture. You see it with almost any pastime that men end up having. It's like at some point they seem to end up have this dark sexualization attached to it, which is just really unfortunate. And it's an obvious manifestation of shaming men. And it doesn't really necessarily apply to just feminine endeavors. It applies to masculine ones, and it applies to things that are just completely neutral. And,
Just want to point out that Slate article was written by Amanda Marcotti, just for anyone who knows Amanda Marcotti. She's the one who says it's all about pornography and sex.
Yeah, and I think part of the desire to sexualize men's pastimes is to have that hold of shaming over them so women can decide when they get to engage in them. And it's almost like having like a preemptive right hook, keep men off balance and not able to say, you know what, I have this pastime, this is mine, and it's perfectly acceptable for me to engage in it. If you put them on this footing where they're already shamed, they are already in a defensive position. So it controls. Women end up having the control over when and where men are allowed to have, their own time. And it seems it's a pattern that repeats itself over and over again. Della, you wanted
I think
to add
part
something?
of it, yeah, I think part of it has to do with supporting the feminist victim complex. And I think this whole thing of sexualizing everything men do, because feminists have turned sex into a battleground and tried to turn all heterosexual sex into rape, as they're sexualizing things that men do that are completely not sexual. What they're doing is attempting to define everything men do as an inherently destructive thing, because they do treat heterosexual sex as men conquering women. So if they sexualize men's activity, they're treating those activities as ways in which men can conquer women without actually being with women. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, it's a way of extending the shaming into a completely new facet of shame. It's really the pattern is pretty obvious, and it's pretty. It just happens regardless of what type of pastime it is, really. But since I haven't really spoken about my interest in this, I actually, when I was a girl, strangely enough, about the only feminine interest I had was My Little Ponies. Of course, the cartoon at the time was completely inane. It was just, it lacked any kind of substance. It was pretty much unwatchable. It was saccharine. It was sweet. It didn't have any real conflict or meaning. But I still liked the ponies. I really liked the toys. And so when My Little Pony was revived, I actually did watch My Little Pony. I haven't watched all of the episodes because I've severely run out of time. But the episodes I did watch, I like the update and the fact that there is a lot more invested in the characterization, in the plotting, and a lot more subtlety in the interactions. And there's a lot more cleverness to it, I find. So I can understand the appeal of the show. It's far superior to what it was in the 80s, which were unwatchable. The shows were unwatchable. And I recently finished Equestria Girls, and I found it interesting because that particular movie, one of the characters in it, oh goodness, again with names, I'm terrible with names, but it was the main female baddie, and she was actually the embodiment of hypoagency, of a woman who uses a threat or affected weakness to control the people around her. Like, she would construct these threat narratives around these other characters and actually turn them against each other. And I thought it was really interesting because it was an examination of that process of undermining other people through rumors, through miscommunication, through innuendo, and it was actually fairly clever for what it was. You know, it still has that youthful direction. It's still directed at a younger audience, but it still held that kind of adult appeal. I remember the moment that I realized that it really was about that kind of mean girls attitude. So to be honest, I think that Bronies really, like the show has adult appeal. Like, it has something worth watching about it. It's like Powder Puff Girls or like other shows that are aimed at children but still have something for adults. And so it's like, I'm not sure what to say about why they come in for so much shaming. Because it's not even a situation where it's an infantile show. It's not. It's like the exact opposite. It actually has that subject. It actually has that quality to it that it appeals to adults. So anyway, actually, I do have some theories, and unless you guys want to jump in here at all.
I found a really interesting article I want to mention, actually. But you can go ahead and finish your thought if you prefer. I found an article called "What Do Men's Rights Activists and Bronies Have in Common?" which is really kind of funny. So I want to make sure people check this out. So it's on the American Prospect, and it's written by a guy named John Coombs. Coumes. Anyways, the title of the article is "What Do Men's Rights Activists and Bronies Have in Common?" And subtitled, "After contending with decades of scorn, geeks are finally at the cool kids' table, unless the weird and misogynistic fringes of nerd culture topple it all." So the complaint of the article, and it's really rambling and really difficult to follow what this guy presents as logic, but he seems to be saying that that these nerds who like My Little Pony have come along and wrecked things for the geeky guys and making it like really creepy, and that's how he figures they're the same as men's rights activists, that men's rights have come along and they've made men really creepy again. It was a stunning find, so hopefully people will Google that and check it out. Again, it's on American Prospect, written by John Coumes, and it's called "What Do Men's Rights Activists and Bronies Have in Common?"
Yeah, we're both groups of people who other people like to treat as vermin, that we're just some sort of vermin. Anyway, Della, go ahead.
So basically what this article is saying is that treating men as human beings is creepy, and enjoying a television show because it's a good show is creepy.
I read it twice, and I still can't really summarize what exactly it is the guy was trying to say.
That's just basically what I'm getting from that. Treating men as human is creepy, and watching a show because it's a good show is creepy. Essentially, anything that feminists don't approve is creepy.
Actually, there was another really interesting thing at the end of it where they're going like, "What if some of the worst trends of nerddom run amok?" And then they go look at Japan, and they started comparing the Japanese culture where the men are, basically the MGTOW movement, moving away from women, and that's the finish of the article is where they basically compare bronies to MGTOW. So that goes back to at the beginning saying how basically these guys, they don't seem to have a use to women, so we need to shame them and get rid of them somehow.
It's actually almost comical, the hypocrisy and the feminist response to MGTOW, because everything about male sexuality and any male interaction with a woman they treat as creepy. They automatically treat it as unwanted and imposed. And then it's shamed if a guy approaches a girl that he hasn't met before and talks to her, that's somehow creepy. If a guy approaches a girl that he does know and talks to her in a way that she's not accustomed to, that's creepy. If somebody being asked out, it's creepy. In fact, getting asked out is defined as sexual harassment. Getting spoken to on the street is sexual harassment. And then they turn around and say, but if you don't pay any attention to us at all, well, that's creepy too. It's essentially, there's nothing men can do to not be creepy.
Absolutely. The actual ending lines of the article goes like this: Japanese men are having sex and kids in smaller numbers than they ever have. 1 in 4 Japanese men in their 30s are virgins and have given up on real relationships for video game women or pillow wives, so much so that it's a national crisis. Men in the United States have taken a different route, frustrated opprobrium rather than apathy. But the land of the rising sun is proof positive that whether or not you care if geek is cool, trends like ours can go south like the carpetbagger. So that's how he summarizes at the very end how bronies are like men's rights.
It's just basically, keep away, keep away, keep away. How dare you listen to me and keep away? What's wrong with you? It just seems, it blows your mind. It's creepy no matter what you do.
And ultimately, men aren't having sex and having kids. So that's a huge national crisis, and this is where we're headed if we have bronies.
So he's just assuming that men who like a television show, because they like that television show, that's going to mean that they're not going to ever be involved with women?
That's the assumption of the article, this particular one. And I guess that's how he figures bronies are like MRAs, because, MRAs, men going their own way movement and stuff like that. So obviously people who are into, My Little Pony, they're going to be just like MRAs, not having sex with women and not producing children. to make women happy. So.
Yeah.
Kind of stunning.
It goes back to that. It goes back to that whole defining men by their usefulness to women. If they're not useful to women, they're not worth anything.
Yeah, and just the whole. You have to assess things. Is it masculine? Is it feminine? And at the same time, they're telling people that how do you put this? I guess feminism and the social justice warrior kind of cause where they want people to become genderless and stuff like that. There's this whole movement to remove masculinity and femininity, and those are the very same people who have to analyze everything of what it means in relation to masculinity and femininity. So they're strangely reinforcing the same gender stereotypes that they claim to be trying to defeat all the time. I said earlier, there's no winning. Right? You can't be masculine, you can't be feminine. And the article searches for feminism and bronies is really interesting. You get the entire spectrum from, them claiming that it's a feminist thing and it's an anti-feminist thing, and just all these opinions are outrageous, like completely a result of women's studies telling everybody that you have to assess everything in the world for what it's trying to tell women.
I think you're right. I think, Allison, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Unfortunately, I just had to drop out for a bit due to unforeseen circumstances, but I am back. And, what is interesting to me is this sort of cyclical phenomenon that I've observed. And the phenomenon is that men will create or get involved in an activity or interest or even a fashion trend, actually, and women ignore them for a while until they notice that what they're doing, what the men are doing, is cool. Then women take it over, and men are sort of shown the door, or either men have to abide by women's rules. And can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yep. Sorry. It's giving me really, really bad feedback here. But anyway, so then once men are shown the door, or all of the ridiculous rules that women invent that they have to abide by start to get so onerous that they can't stand anymore, they go invent some new idea and enjoy it until women decide they want it too. And it's sort of rinse and repeat throughout the ages. So essentially, from what I've noticed from that phenomenon, and I'll get to how this applies to the bronies, is that what we code as masculine, and when I say use the word we, I mean society in general. What we code as masculine is pretty much synonymous with things women aren't interested in yet. So everything that women don't have a current interest in is considered masculine. Once women have an interest in it, it becomes feminine and men are excluded. But what's interesting with the bronies is that they're doing sort of the opposite of that. Instead of women adopting a male pastime and turning it feminine, and then co-opting it and colonizing it, and then sort of making all of these social rules that men have to abide by for their comfort, bronies are adopting a female pastime. So it's almost like they're going against this fundamental social taboo. And it's interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to get your guys' idea about that.
Well, one of the last articles that I came across when I was researching before all my power cut out and I lost my computer for a bit was something called The Bronies Documentary is Borderline Propaganda, written by a woman named Myrna Waldron for a site called Bitchflix. It was a review of a documentary that the woman who wrote it, what's her name, Lauren Faust. So she did a documentary about the bronies because it was an unexpected following, so they thought this was really interesting. And she called it propaganda, this Myrna woman, because she was ignoring the women who like it too. So she was basically, it was like she's saying she's handing over the show to all the men, and she's letting this female turf get taken over by men moving into a women's space, which, I thought of it because you mentioned the women taking over men's spaces all the time. So, yeah, guys go into a typically female space, and the review is, it's propaganda. they're stealing this from us. And she demanded basically that the female followers of the show get as much attention and as much time as these bronies do.
Yeah, I've noticed just sort of a weird hypocrisy about that. If a phenomenon is 90% male and 10% female, we need to focus on the women because they're an underserved population. If it's 10% women and 90% 90% women and 10% male, if men get any focus at all, it's because they're men and we prefer to focus on them, right? It doesn't matter what the percentages are. If women are not focused on, then they are, you know, it's like some sort of horrible crime has been committed. And it could be like 99% male, but if it's 1% female, we need to focus on that 1% female. You know, and the funny thing is that if men get any focus at all, women seem to start crying foul. I mean, look at November. Think about it, I don't know if it's like this where you guys are, but it seems like it's all year round pink ribbons, right? And then we have 1 month to bring attention to cancers that affect men, and everybody, like, we had local papers here, journalists in local papers here decrying Movember as sexist, racist, and transphobic. You know, we focus on men a little bit, and suddenly the world explodes.
I'm a little sidetracked here because I decided to Google brony porn while you were talking.
Oh, God.
There's some really funny
that would be
stuff.
distracting.
There's even a plush toy with an opening at the back of it, so you know bronies can have their fun with it. I love you guys.
You know what? The reality is that, yes, there's a contingent. Obviously, there's a contingent in the brony fandom that there's a sexual component to it, right? But the thing is that I don't think women can talk, because think about all the stuff that they draw and write about their favorite shows. You know, all of the
hell, have sex with disembodied latex penises. I mean, how is that better than having sex with a stuffed animal with a hole in it?
Hopefully they made that one machine washable. I was actually thinking earlier, though, like as far as people taking a kid's show or kids' toys or something like that and sexualizing it, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few young girls who have tried to have Barbie and Ken make a baby.
Yeah.
Well, there was a Barbie that came with a baby that could be removed, if I recall correctly, in the 90s. It was after my Barbie days. My Barbies drove Tonka trucks, so, well, those were the glamour dolls, but they were like little Barbies. But, yeah, there was Barbie with the baby and Barbie with the house and the family and everything. That was, yeah. Of course, there would be little girls that would imagine how the baby got there.
I didn't really play with Barbies, but if I had, I'm sure they would have been in compromising positions at least once.
James,
I have one Barbie that has a red mohawk.
James, our show producer, informs us that the stuffed plushie with the openings are intended to be used with condoms. But I wanted to point something out. I just wanted to clarify that for the audience so that, I don't know, nobody uses their stuffed plushie incorrectly. But what I wanted to point out is that if My Little Pony is Magic was cast, an all-male cast, and featured only male ponies, I guarantee there would be gay porn of them created by women. Adult women in their 40s and 50s would have drawn those ponies having sex, and I guaranteed it would exist. And I'm pretty sure there's probably sexualizations. I bet if you did a search on gender reversed My Little Pony / fiction, you would or drawings, you would find illustrations. of gay My Little Ponies getting it on. So I don't think women have any leg to stand on with the sexualization issue. So yes, there is a contingent, a Bronnie contingent that there's a sexual component to the show. There's fantasies of see a sexual component to the show. But the reality is, if it was gender reversed, women would be seeing it too, and they would be creating this stuff too. So yeah, you don't have a leg to stand on to judge men on that particular issue.
Kind of think, whatever you want to use your toys for, that's your own business.
Yeah, but really, what's the difference between a plush fleshlight and a regular fleshlight? There isn't really.
Just don't be caught getting one of those like X-rays of whatever stuck up your butt. That's the only thing I recommend. Do not be that guy or that girl who has to go into the hospital and get the X-ray done.
Just be careful what you stick up your butt. All right. With that, I think I'm going to see Jen. Can we go to some commercials?
Ow! He's on you! Eating feminists! You vipers! You dragons! You evil monsters! Oh, hello everyone. Didn't see you there. Angry Harry here. Still fighting after all these years. So don't forget to visit angryharry.com to arm yourself with cognitive cluster bombs. Bombs with which to blow the wicked feminists to smithereens.
Hey everybody, this is Aaron Clary, aka Captain Capitalism. Look, I got a great book out there for any student who's going to college or for any parent who has a kid going to college. The title of the book is called Worthless. It is the indispensable young person's guide to choosing the right major. You can find it on Amazon.com. It's in paperback, Kindle, and Audible, all for a lot less than what your kid is going to pay for tuition. That's Worthless. You can find it on Amazon.com.
That's the sound of a glass lens being broken. Most people view the world through a narrow lens, ignoring factors and concepts that don't fit their predetermined worldview. I'm Della Burton, author of Breaking the Glasses, written from an anti-feminist perspective with a focus on men's rights and certain social issues with an unconventional spin. You can check it out at breakingtheglasses.blogspot.com. Join me in breaking those dogma-tinted glasses.
Come listen to A Voice for Men Radio, the voice of Europe.
The voice of Europe.
This show is probably the only one at this point addressing the issues concerning men and boys at a European level.
The voice of Europe.
Every Friday on 7 p.m. London time and 1 p.m. Central Time.
This is the place where feminism gets to be called out on its lies and propaganda, and the state is invited to get out of people's lives.
I am Lucian Bulsan, and this is the voice of Europe.
Are you interested in men's rights activism? Do you live in the Sydney area or its surrounding suburbs? If so, please point your browsers to mensrightssydney.webs.com. That's mensrightssydney.webs.com.
And we're back. Back to the show, back to Honey Badger Radio, Bronies and the Shame Game. I wanted to point out something. Sorry, I'm having issues here. I wanted to point out something about the shaming of Bronies. Not only do Bronies get it from feminists and from women and society in general, but there are also guys, let's be frank, there are also guys who shame Bronies for not being sufficiently masculine. The funny thing I find, oh God, my producers just texted me, Bronies. The funny thing I find about the fact that men are shaming Bronies is that, as you can see from my intro to the show, shaming men for their pastime is a very feminine activity. It's mostly been women, the scolds, the nags, the shrews throughout history who have shamed men for their pastimes. And yet these guys are shaming men for a pastime, which is a feminine activity. So they're engaging in a feminine activity. Feminine activity is shaming men for their pastimes because those pastimes are feminine. I find that sort of ironic. And I'd like to hand this over to Della. She has something important to say.
I want to revisit just a little bit of discussion before the commercial break there, where we were talking about the plushies, and I did happen to bring up dildos and everything. Getting to thinking about it, what really seems to permeate society, and it seems to be more among feminists and more among women, is that we shame any kind of sexual activity, sexual attachment, any kind of sexual behavior that doesn't cater specifically to women. So it's okay for women to have sex with an inanimate object because they're women, and it's for women. And I honestly think, because there is an aspect of the furry community that does involve plushies, and I honestly think the only reason that we would consider that as a society would consider that any different is because it doesn't cater to women. It doesn't involve pleasuring women or intimacy with women.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't cater. It's the concept that men are defined by their usefulness to women. And the female villain in Equestria Girls is Sunset Shimmer. I wanted to get that out because I did know it. I just couldn't think of it at the time. But yeah, it's a huge element of all of this is just this idea of shaming men for their sexuality. Right now, I'm going to do the call out for callers. The number is 1-310-388-9709. That's 1-310-388-9709. We ask that you keep it to the topic, which will be bronies or shaming of male pastimes in general. But please do call in if you have a story about being shamed as a brony, and or if you have a story about being shamed as a man who has any kind of pastime that comes in for it, which is everyone, really, every single pastime, really. And so we're going to go now to Dean. I think everybody recognizes Dean.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Bro
Hello.
hook for everybody. Bro hook
Just
for everybody.
I'm just introducing you, Dean. Dean is the managing editor of The Voice for Men. He also is the anchor, basically the anchor for Aaron's show, Aaron Pizzi's show, Revelations with Aaron. He also does co-hosts with Toyed or Christian, Tales from the Infrared, which is a show about geek culture through a men's rights perspective. And he's also a brony. So what do you have to say to us today, Dean?
I am half of a brony. I will grab myself status as honorary brony because a year or two ago, my son, who 14, 15 at the time, came out to me as a brony. So I'm like, it's like he was thinking I was going to be, I don't know, somehow like he was coming out to me as gay or something, which I thought was funny. I'm like, oh, cool. Why don't I watch it? And I sat and watched the first 2 seasons of it. I haven't seen the 3rd season. I will say for anybody who's interested in the show got more interesting about halfway through the 1st season, and they started developing more complex story arcs. The 2nd season was a significant improvement on the first overall, I think. But one of the things, now, by the way, my son is not particularly stereotypically nerdy. He's big. He's brawny. He is a brawny brony. He is very socially engaging. He likes talking to people. He's not an introvert or weirdo. Well, he's my son, so he's a little weird, but you know what I mean. And one of the things that I key on when I look at the brony thing, because I think it's cool as hell, I always have, And by the way, I got a friend of mine who's almost 40. He's like 6'3" black dude, and I mentioned the whole brony thing to him, and he said, "Yeah, me too, bro hoof, dap." So and this guy is anything but a recluse and a loser. In fact, he kind of cats around a lot. He likes the show. But one of the things that surprises me, more people don't key in on. Because here's something I keep keying in on right away with the show, which is that phrase "friendship is magic." A constant theme that runs throughout the show, pretty much every episode, is how important friendship and loyalty and supporting each other is in life. I mean, it is the overriding theme of almost everything. Half the shows when there's conflict to be resolved, more than half the time, it's when they come to the conclusion that they weren't tolerating, loving, and helping each other enough. That's just a huge theme of the show, which sounds stereotypically feminine. But one of the things I keyed in on, well, first off, I'm not sure women are always like that, but whatever. We call that stereotypically feminine. Boys, in my experience, from what I've observed today, even them being friends with each other and having really close, tight friendships with each other is made fun of. Even with silly terms like bromance and male bonding that gets laughed at, male on male friendship is viewed as suspect, and I think that's driven into boys even at a very early age. And I think with young boys, I'll use the word boy to describe anybody under 25, okay, because I'm just old enough to do that. That part of themselves has almost been excised from current popular society, the way they're raised in school. Their natural rambunctiousness is bad. They're supposed to always include girls in everything, and even though if you know anything about child development, you know boys and girls almost always go through a natural period where they don't like each other. They all have cooties, and boys don't want to be with girls, and girls don't want to be boys. They all go through that phase, but they're discouraged from that now. There's something suspect just about little boys being friends with other little boys now. And even in suburban culture, they have to set up play dates so the kids don't just run around anymore, walk to each other's house or bike ride to their houses. A lot of times they just have to get driven places with play dates. I actually think there's a thirst in a lot of young men for friendship and closeness and bonding, and that may be part of the attraction of this show here. That's just my observation.
I would agree. It's a very good observation. Yeah, it's definitely an observation, and certainly the coding of that as feminine is unfortunate, because it really isn't. It's a natural human urge to want to have companionship, to want to have that connection with other people. And thank you for your insight, Brian. Thank you for calling in.
No problem. Yep.
One of the things I noticed with the documentaries about where they went to the Brony Con convention things, whatever, is that a number of the people they interviewed were musicians and artists and people who were appreciating the show just on those factors alone. So they're assessing it as, for the quality of the show, right? And yes, there's a certain number of people that become attached to it because they like the whole friendship thing, and we're living in a pretty aggressive society that's really competitive, and resources are getting slimmer and slimmer. So that might be fueling this, attachment to friendship, and also because it's a valid thing for people, whether you're female or male. Most of the people that they interviewed were artists and musicians and people assessing it on an actual technical level.
Yeah, it really should be assessed also on a technical level, because it is a beautiful show. It's very well done. And on that level, it has a lot of merit. Even if you just keep it to that level, it has a lot of merit. It has a lot of sophistication to it. So, I mean, the idea that it's engaging is it is engaging. It's a good show, and ghettoizing it as a girl show and then deciding that only certain people can like it, I think is actually sort of an insult to the creators.
You know, I think Dean had a really good point with his thing about the friendship aspect of it, and men becoming interested, young men and boys becoming interested in the show because of the friendship aspect. I hadn't really thought about it, but if you look back through more historical literature as opposed to modern literature, and more historical or older movies as opposed to newer movies and everything, there was kind of a different attitude between men in groups then and men in groups now, as far as the social attitude toward men in groups, or even just dual friendships, best buddies and stuff. And you can still see some of the best buddy thing in cartoons. You can see it in anime, but you really don't see it a lot in modern popular culture as an accepted thing, without some other context added to it to justify it. You know, they have to have been thrown together because of a situation. They can't just have become buddies. They can't just be close because they're close. And it's almost like there's an ideological attack on the idea of male bonding. Typhon, are you there? Diana, are you there?
I'm still here, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't by myself.
It was just so stunning, your comment. I was still observing it. So I was writing in the comments. I'm just like, I can cope with the warm fuzzies of the bronies. Just keep lulz cats out of it, man.
Yeah. No, but it strikes me that seems to be maybe a trend, maybe a goal. I'm not sure how you would want to put it, but there's definitely an objection to the idea of men being close to other men. And it's like, I think it goes back to that whole idea of defining men based on their usefulness to women. Groups of men hanging out to be groups of men hanging out together aren't doing that for women. They're doing that to hang out. And if you look back through articles in women's magazines, which, you know, I really don't do much anymore, but tried out reading some of them when I was younger. I used to read my mother's Red Book magazines and actually made an effort to understand Cosmo in my 20s. That didn't work out so well, but I do recall a lot of articles about hating your boyfriend's friends. Like, all boyfriends are awesome, but all of their friends are all bad people, which made no sense to me whatsoever, because if they also had girlfriends, they must be awesome too, right? But yeah, you know, guys are not allowed to have friends. They're not allowed to hang out in groups. They're not allowed to gather together without women, and they're not allowed to be independent of women in today's culture. And it seems like there really is a direct attack on male closeness, male bonding, male grouping, anything that might be conspiratorial about men.
Anything that allows men to have get that kind of social interaction, that kind of social value from anybody but women. And I think the bronies really reflect that. I mean, as much as I think feminists say that they want feminine men, I think they feel threatened at the idea that a man can get femininity from himself. He can get a certain amount of it from himself, because then they don't have that lock on the supply, which explains why, despite saying that they want men to get in contact with their feminine side, feminists constantly use homophobia and effeminate shaming and pedo shaming to shame guys who are in touch with their female side. And they also, I remember a while ago, there was this amazing article written by a feminist called Clarissa Thorne. I don't know if either of you have heard of that name. Have you?
No.
Clarissa Thorne wrote an article that essentially asked, how can men embrace feminism while still remaining attractive to me?
Jeez.
There you have it. It's right there, plain black and white. The reality is that feminists want men to be feminine at the same time as they cannot stand a man who's actually vulnerable. Anyway, we need to move on to another caller because we now have a ton of them. I'm going to bring Peter Fox on the air. I have probably mispronounced your name, so please tell me the correct pronunciation. Peter Fox?
Yeah, it's Peter Fox.
Okay. So what did you have to say to us tonight?
I'm just happy to be on here on a side note, and also again on a side note before I ask the question, where is the best play?
Okay, Peter, just slow down a bit because your line is sort of breaking up. So just slow down a bit.
Sorry, I was
okay.
Well, I work at. Everybody I know knows I'm a brony and everything, and most of my people I know are women, and I mostly hang out with my coworkers at work, and they know I'm a brony, yeah. But most of them, they understand. They don't make fun of me because they know that I'm a very loving person, and also I guess because I don't know, they know that I like to practice fighting and kickboxing and Native American tomahawk and knife fighting style. But I'm just amazed how you said that women will attack men for liking something like that. The only reason I got into My Little Pony versus Magic is because, well, it's innocent. That's my opinion. That's why I like it. It's innocent. Also, T.J. May is my favorite voice actress. That's the main reason, actually. Also, because, but to me, I don't watch television much. Nothing but junk on TV now. Sexist, making fun of men all the time. Especially stupid Dorito commercials. And nothing good on TV, actually. And, well, seeing you taking up this topic is finally got here. Now I could hear their opinion, what do you have to say about this. And I think...
Excellent accent. What's the accent? Where are you from?
Texas.
From Texas. Oh, I would not have guessed that. It was very lyrical.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations for being, okay with just liking something for the fact you like it, because that's really all you have to account for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you like something, that's your own business. And, if you want to communicate with people online about, things you share in common, then I don't see why anybody else has to judge you for it.
That's good. Thank you.
Promoting friendship in the world today, that sounds to me like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that's what I like. It's also because the show's innocent, unlike most of the stuff on television. There's too much sex in it, and I'm just too old-fashioned sometimes. I was raised in a conservative household, so I'm just old-fashioned, I guess. So
it's perfectly fine to like what you like, right? And and I wanted to pick up on some of the stuff you said, and that's something that I've sort of noticed. There are guys who are just guys who like My Little Pony. They're not feminine guys. They're just either normal or even masculine by our conception. And it's like just guys liking the show. It doesn't really have a reflection on their masculinity or femininity. It's just an interest. And that's what's, I guess, sort of painful to see, is that men's interest can have such a strong reflection on their sexual identity. It seems rather unfortunate, But thank you for the call, Peter Fox. And we're going to move on now to Ken. I know I didn't mispronounce that. Ken?
Hello.
Hi.
I'd like to first preface this by saying I'm not a brony. I've seen a couple episodes of the show, but I'm not a big fan of it. I am, however, a really big fan of anime, and all through school, specifically high school, I received a lot of crap for that. People thought I was gay for it. People thought I was just that weird guy. But I wanted to ask, what do you think is fundamentally the difference in the forms of entertainment between, say, My Little Pony or Sailor Moon or any other anime show, and shows that most people don't generally consider as weird if men like them, like Mad Men or, I don't know, Big Bang Theory or even Desperate Housewives. Fundamentally speaking, why are these different forms of entertainment? It's entertainment.
Yeah, I would agree.
With anime, I think part of what caused people to, dang it, I'm hearing myself after I say each thing. I'm echoing. Anyway, back to the anime thing. I think the reason that people have treated that as a nerdy behavior is because a lot of the anime out there is more complex than, especially like in the United States or possibly Canada. It's more complex than the shows that people watch every day. We watch sitcoms on TV. We watch slapstick. And I think some of the plot lines in anime, although there's really lighthearted anime out there, a lot of the plot lines that make it to the Western countries are heavier and deeper and more. You have to be more invested in the show to follow it. And I think people treat that as an intellectual pursuit, and it automatically gets nerdized. And also because the plot lines are something you get more invested in, people who follow anime the way people who follow soap operas, except, again, it's a bigger, a more intellectual pursuit. And I think part of it is this idea of, I think sometimes people feel like their own pursuits might look not necessarily inferior but smaller in some way beside it, and so they're going to treat it like the people who follow that particular pursuit that they consider the intellectual pursuit are snobbish and aloof and different, and or if they don't get it and the other person does get it, in order to not feel like there's something wrong with themselves, they'll treat the other person like there's something wrong with him. And at least that's been my experience with being made fun of for being a fan of some anime.
I think I'd have to agree with you on that. Like you said, there are a lot of lighthearted anime, and a lot of them have been localized to the United States, like, Lucky Star or Azumanga Daioh. But when most Americans think of anime, they don't generally think of that. They think of things like Pokemon or Sailor Moon or any other shows that have 70 or more episodes.
Yeah.
And I think also the whole nerd thing plays into the fact that in general, anime fans tend to be, anime fans tend to already be fairly, I don't want to say nerdy people, but nerdy individuals, people who tend to like, people who don't tend to like sports, for example. And I think a lot of that is people expect men to like sports. People expect men to like really gung-ho things. And we just don't conform to that stereotype, and I think that's why, at least in my experience, people thought I was an unusually feminine individual.
But the thing is that it just is. That's a really unusual thing to think. I mean, why wouldn't you just think, well, that's a guy who likes anime? Like, why do they have to categorize guys based on their interests? Really?
It's a good question, really. I think largely the reason people thought I was gay for it was because at the time, Sailor Moon was really popular in the United States, and that's, one would argue, quite feminine.
Yeah, Sailor Moon was popular for a long time.
Yeah, but that was the only anime you could really get. And, yeah, it was feminine, but at least it had the virtue of having relatively interesting plots, at least from what I can remember.
Yeah.
You know,
it was better. That was on basic cable.
And it was better than a lot of the stuff that they were putting out for kids in the West. And I think the anime actually sparked almost like a mini revolution in reconsidering animation in general, you know, as a possible vehicle of at least stuff with subtext that's a bit more mature, right?
Right.
And I think possibly part of it is also that animation, because it's drawn, it gets this sort of it's stereotyped or ghettoized as a children's thing, and that's like I'm not sure if we can shake that really, because it's so enculturated that it's childish, right? Cartoons are childish, comics are childish. And I hope
it's actually
it's
actually such a strong thing that a lot of parents do not necessarily monitor their children's watching of anime very carefully unless they're also. In fact, my first anime was Galaxy Express 999, and I was like 8 or 9 years old when it was on cable. If anybody's familiar with that one, you know it's not a children's movie.
No, definitely not. You make a good point, though, about animation. Then I have to bring up, people don't generally consider South Park to be a kid's show. I mean, it's very vulgar. What's the difference?
One of the things I noticed in the documentaries about the show and the origins of the show, like its evolution through the different generations, is that this Generation 4 one that became so popular, she specifically tried to make sure that the characters were very realistic, that they each had a distinct personality, and that you could identify with them as a real personality that you encounter in life. And that's part of what made the show take off, right? Is that you're not just watching some silly, shallow, one-dimensional animation. You're watching a show written by somebody who's creating dialogue between characters that are very relatable. Right?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I watched the show. It's got that kind of depth, and the characters are actually relatively, like, I mean, for a children's show, they're not going to be that complex because, there's probably a lot of human darkness that can't be embodied in a children's show. But what I wanted to say is that I find, even though I say that animation has gotten into this ghetto that's really very childish, animation and comics are one of my favorite artistic mediums. I absolutely love almost all comics and animation. So I wish we could get it out of this idea that it is childish. And it's really unfortunate that it is there, because I think that there's lots of stuff that you can say in that medium that really can't be said with the same kind of quality, the same kind of essence, maybe.
Right.
But thanks for the call, Ken. And thank you for your insights. They were good. And we're going to move now to Ligress. Tell me which one is right. Ligress. Okay. So what do you have to tell us today?
Okay, cool. You hear me?
Yep.
Good evening. I am a brony. Let's see. To try to go over the things.
Brony hoof, dude. Awesome.
What? Oh, okay.
Bro hoof.
Bro! Oh, my monitor. Sorry.
Okay. Did you have something
you
wanted to say? Yes, we hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Let's see. Male friendship.
Okay, for some reason, Ligress is cutting out on me.
Sounded like he was sitting on a tripod and it fell over.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, but yeah, we're going to mute Ligress and move on now to Mike. Mike, are you there? Hello, Mike. Okay, another interesting sound effects going on. How about Scribbler G?
Scribbler? Hi,
Scribbler?
This is Scribbler G. How you doing? Yeah, this is me.
Oh, yep. So what did you want to bring to the table tonight?
I have a little more general take on this. I'm a 51-year-old man, and I was raised more in a sort of traditional culture when I was young, and so like my experience of cartoons and stuff was it was like Speed Racer and Gigantor and very like action heroic kind of figures, And I had a daughter. It was born in the late 80s, and I kind of watched a lot of these cartoons of the 90s with her. And I secretly loved it, and I was almost ashamed of it, And I actually now have a niece who I spent some time taking care of, and I ended up watching My Little Pony with her a bunch of times, and it helps me access a different part of myself, a very soft, I'm very hung up, I'm very focused on like the hero's journey thing that men are caught up on. I really see it present in my life. And when I hear that, I was aware of the brony thing, and I'm not a brony, right? But I enjoyed it. I just don't go out and watch it without my niece, But I'm kind of outraged that, like, all people, feminists, would criticize men for accessing that softer side, that more emotional. It's sweet. It's cute. It's nice. It's about friendship. It's less results and directional, And I don't know. I find I just keep hearing these things coming at me, and it's like, what are men supposed to do? I mean, I think that we're almost like I hear the other callers talking. I mean, this has to be kind of hurtful if you're a brony, right? I kind of heard it in their voices, almost like not quite shame, but feeling that feeling like they're not righteous or something because they want to like this show. Does that make any sense? Or am I just rambling?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. And part of the problem is that I'm echoing, so I'm going to let Diana take it for a moment.
I think it's on the same level where, there was this big call for men to become more feeling and more sensitive. And then as soon as guys started to adapt to that, saying, okay, you think I'm being too aggressive or strong or masculine, whatever that means, I'm going to be more sensitive, then women were just like, oh my God, what do I do with this? They didn't want it, right? And it's the same kind of a thing with guys embracing some sort of a, friendship, loving attitude, where all of a sudden they're going, oh my God, I don't know what this means. I wonder if they almost think you're making fun of women.
Well, but even in your comment there, and I don't mean to, maybe I took it the wrong way, but guess what? I am emotional and soft and cuddly too. I'm a human being. Like, women don't have those things, and men don't only, right? They don't have the corner. I've just been socialized to suppress those things, right? Particularly sort of the environment I was raised in, right? So it was interesting for media and that experience with my daughter. I've never admitted this publicly before, and I don't know how goofy this is going to sound, but like, I really liked movies like The Little Mermaid. I watched them a couple of times without my daughter around. And I would never tell somebody, like that silly movie Clueless. She loved it. I must have watched it 100 times with her. I probably watched it 6 times myself since then, just when I wanted to relax and just turn my brain off. There's something about feminine energy, or accessing what I think is feminine, that I find really soothing and comforting, And I mean, and it helps me step into that because it's innate in me, but not necessarily easily accessible for me, And I guess I just feel really like hurt emotionally that the fucking feminists have got to do, like, they can't they can't let anything go. Like, what can guys do that some feminist isn't going to come in and judge and mince up and stomp on, and then have no regard to the feeling of men? I did a little searching while I was listening to all this, and I found this SD Mom Fia, some crazy feminist, and she actually says, quote unquote, to this point, I will say that looking at my daughter this morning, still glassy-eyed from her pony dreams, I realized why this bothers me so much. To me, it's a step away from some kind of child molestation. I see these 30-year-old men sitting there with pink plastic ponies and envision them getting turned on. I'm like, my experience was so the opposite. My thing is like sitting there on the couch under a blanket with my 6-year-old niece, having a really nice bonding time watching this. There's no sexualization that comes up. It just outrages me at some level, and I think the emotional sort of abuse. There's at a very subtle level. It's really abusive to men. You know, women seem to think emotional abuse goes all one way, but like they take these shots at us all the time. You know, and I don't want to go on and on, but I think you maybe get the point.
Well, I could listen to you go on and on. It's a great rant. First of all, I want to let you know that what you heard me saying, right? I don't really care what people like or don't like. When I said women want men to be a certain way, I don't consider myself a part of that generic group, right? Because I don't really see people the same way. But as a result of me saying that and putting you on a rant, I'm really glad you took it that way, because what you just said was amazing. It was really, really great.
Well,
and I agree with it 100%.
Well, and to some degree, I've actually learned this from women, right? Thank you. Like, and then what you do, you kick me in the nuts as soon as you help me out. Like, what? You know, it's just, where am I supposed to stand? You know, I'll take a completely different slant on this. So I am kind of a man's man type A in reality. I have to, like, crank myself into a different shape. And I discovered golf late in life. And one of the things I loved about golf was it was a guy thing. It was just a little space where there was mostly men. And then women invaded it. And I do not think women shouldn't golf. That's not my point. My point is, what space do men have? Is there any male space that's safe, quote unquote? You know, I mean, they talk about safety. Like, where's safety for men? Where am I not going to be attacked for being a creep? I really want to know. You know, I mean, or where can I just be a man and not have to think about it? You know, that's kind of the thing that just drives me crazy about this. It's like we're asked to examine ourselves. I just went on a rant on YouTube. I'm Scribbler G1. That's why I use this, right, on YouTube, on this stupid video of this guy basically taking the mask off. And what I said to this feminist, I said, listen, I'm 51 years old. I've been getting lectured by you goddamn people my whole life about every fucking thing I do and think. Do you think you could just shut the fuck up and leave us alone? You know, I mean, and bronies, you know, it's such a cheap shot. It's so easy to take a kick at them too, traditionally masculine, right? It's sort of like, you know, it's kind of light work to crack on a brony. Let's face it, you know, and how shitty. It's just shitty, and I'm so aggravated with all of it. You know, it's really just a nonstop attack.
You're brilliant. Like you said, you have a YouTube thing. Did you do this kind of a rant on YouTube? Can we direct people to that channel?
Oh no, I don't do a channel. I tried doing it and deleted a whole one. I got so I may do one at some point.
Well, after listening to you right now, I encourage you. Like, this is awesome. You just go and rant and put it online because, you know, this is awesome.
Well, I'm changing careers, but up until almost just about very recently, I had a very, very, very cautious about my social media profile and my presence ever being and it's interesting, right? I felt like I couldn't speak out about this stuff because of my career. I had a business social media profile, and I could be, you know, I was on videos and things like that, you know, and I just couldn't afford to ever have that get corrupted. Now I'm leaving all this shit behind me, so I may be able to do it. So that was more of a sort of a professional consideration.
I'll tell you what, Scribbler, you call in and rant on our show anytime you want because it's absolutely delightful.
Well, and I guess I just at the end of the day, what I want to say to, like, you know, also there's guys out there, you know, 25 years ago, I would have cracked on bronies. I'm just telling you right now. I'd have been like, what's wrong with you? Get a life, for Christ's sakes, you know? And I want to just, you know, we as men, you know, we've been so trained to just smash, to like, we've got to be masculine because women want us to be, right? We've got to be the hero, right? I think that's a big part of what goes on underneath the covers here. You know, women have this, like, this baseline expectation that men better be the heroes in this world. And this is as anti-heroic as it gets, right? You know, watching, you know, My Little Pony being a brony, you know, you're just not going to, it's not what women want from us. You know, it's the exact opposite. And that's what I really think is going on. You know, it's a demand for, you need to be this way for us, combined with this unending criticism. It's like a double bind, right? There's no winning. And so you get a guy like me who's finally gone MGTOW later in life, right? Well, I'm just exhausted with it all. I mean, I'm so shocked between 5 sisters, an ex-wife, a 25-year-old daughter who tells me she doesn't owe me a thing after I spent 500 G's raising her. You know, I'm like, fuck it. I'm just done. That's why I'm walking away from my career. It's too much pressure. I want to go do something fun with the rest of my life. I actually want to have a good time instead of being like having the bit in my goddamn mouth. You know, and I guess this just really teed me up because it's like, it's, you know, it's just so mean. This is just so mean to these brony guys. And I feel a lot of salt. So whatever you guys are out, you know, if anybody of you bronies are listening and you don't feel any love for men, you know, you got love from a man right here. I just want you to know, like, I think we all could really be a lot happier and healthier if we could access the softer, gentler side of ourselves.
Okay, I'm gonna slip in there, and you can continue to rant whenever you want, but I wanted to point something out.
Sure.
I think what's happening with feminists is that they really do not want a feminine man, and the reason why they don't want, well, a so-called feminine man, I would say more a man who has those softer characteristics, has those vulnerabilities. They don't want that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that men have to be masculine, because that's not what I'm about. What I'm about to say is that if a woman wants to be able to handle the vulnerability in a man, she has to do work. Like there is a certain amount of emotional work that women have to do to attain the kind of mentality that can handle softness and vulnerability in a man. And feminists are all about how the patriarchy acts on them, and men and male privilege and psychic male voodoo powers that cause women to be X, Y, and Z, or this way or that way. They're all about saying that women don't have to do anything, right? They don't have to attain anything. They're pretty much perfect as they are. So, but the problem is that if you want a guy who has that softer side, then you gotta spine up. You gotta work on being a person that he can be softer with, which is not being soft yourself. It's taking on I'm not going to say a dominant role, but a more protective role, and allowing that femininity. And people are not femininity, but that softness. I don't want to call it femininity, that vulnerability. You have to be step up to the plate and be a stronger person. And the reality is that feminists do not have an ideology of feminine strength. They do not embrace the idea that women can be strong, that women can be self-starters, that women can be confident, that when somebody needs to lean on them, or when their male partner wants to show a vulnerability, that you don't shame him. That is your opportunity to be strong for him, to have his back, you know. And they don't.
When I'm not type A, that's when women turn on me. I don't want. I mean, there's a story I could tell. It's complicated. It's long. I don't want to get into it all. But the very short version of it is, I discovered I have PTSD late in life, and actually had like recurring nightmares and nervous condition by the time I was 7. I was abused horribly as a kid, right? And so what I finally got access to how much emotional pain and kind of how messed up I've been. It's part of the reason I'm changing careers and really backing off being the moneymaker. And, you know, my daughter's grown. I don't have anybody else to live for. I'm just living for me, you know. And two of my sisters and my daughter turned on me and attacked me and ridiculed me and you know, used, quote, like accused me of being mentally ill and I'm like, when I was the provider and the type A and the bit in my mouth, you know, they loved me. My daughter really doesn't even love me anymore because I'm becoming less like that. You know? It's so disturbing to me that when I stopped being that type A guy, which by the way got me laid like Frank Sinatra, okay? You want to get laid, be type A. Don't listen to women. Don't listen to half the shit they tell you they want. Just be type A and you will get plenty of pussy. It's just a fact. And every time I go sensitive with a woman, they would get interested and go fuck some type A guy, you know? And so I feel like, you know, that's such a limiting way for me to be as a human being. I don't enjoy it anymore. And then I have the people I love the closest to me to turn on me when I'm not that anymore. So, like, it doesn't feel safe for men to be around women and be like that. Women talk about safety all the time, right? It's like I can't really be vulnerable around most women and not think they're going to kick me in the nuts, you know? If the roles reversed, if a man treated a woman that way, it'd be a crime scene, for God's sakes, you know? I don't know. I just spilled my guts about something else I've never talked about publicly here. I don't know what this is, but
yeah, well,
I've never
you know,
really talked about
it's the reality is that it requires strength. And really, number one, feminism isn't about women's strength. It's about women's weakness. So you're never going to get that from somebody who's feminist identified and really takes it to heart. You might get it from one of the really I'm a feminist because I'm a businesswoman type feminist who's never really looked into the shit or even thought about the ideology. But the reality is somebody who's steeped in this victim consciousness of feminism by definition can't be strong for another person. But unfortunately, Scribbler, your rants are great. And we love hearing it. And your passion is wonderful, but we do have to move on because we got a ton of other callers. So thanks you for the call, and we really appreciate you opening up to us and talking about how you really feel. That's a gift.
And thanks for the great work you all do. I appreciate it so very much. All the work you all are doing is helping me really get through a lot of this stuff and process it. You have no idea what a support it is for somebody like me. So thank you very, very much.
I just want to conclude. You're welcome, and I just want to conclude that, and to you and all the guys who are listening, being alpha may get you laid, and that's entirely your choice. But I think that men's vulnerabilities really are a gift, and women should cherish it, and they don't, and it's really unfortunate. But let's move on to Luke Donnelly, 1917. Luke.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, excellent. I wanted to talk about, you were talking about why can't men like kids things, were one of the questions that come up. And I think it's a point that you've been making quite a few times. It's because we're expected and needed to be adults quite quickly. You've got to take care of your family. You've got to be, you've got to be big. You've got to be strong. You've got to do things. So if you're looking into kids things, it's harder to respect you while you do that. Whereas if a woman does it, that's just not a problem. That's sweet. It's charming. Also, men are seen as inherently threatening, so we instinctively think the worst. All the guys so far have talked on. I've never seen this My Little Pony show. I have no idea what's going on, but they're saying how people instinctively thought there was something sexual going on. But we do that with men every time we see a guy. It's like with the Schrodinger's rapist and stuff like that. Just instinctively thinking, what's wrong with men or this man? He's not behaving quite the way I expect him to. Therefore, what's wrong with him? The other thing is, why are men given crap for liking girly things or behaving in a feminine way? Again, it's okay for girls to do it. It's generally activity that we don't like. People being overly emotional, people, crying in public, exposing themselves, whatever. We don't like it, but we have to accept it when a woman does it. When a guy does it, you just go, no, you've got to suck it up, because if we're going to achieve anything, we've got to, stay tough, stick it out. I mean, like if you're playing a football game or whatever you're doing, if you're collectively expected to do it, you've got to really work hard and make it happen. Yeah.
And the reality is that when people do those kind of emotional displays, it is an imposition on other people. It's the expectation that other people center your emotions over their own, right? If you start crying, you're saying, I need everybody to focus on me now. So it is an imposition that we sort of tolerate with women and we do not tolerate with men. And I would agree with that.
No, that's exactly right. But it's not that we like it when women do it or that we like it when girls do it. It's just that we have to accept this behaviour because we have to protect the women. It absolutely has to be done. Their welfare, their well-being, the way they feel, these are all things that are really important. Whereas a guy who can't suck it up, though I have to say that when guys are all together and alone, that's not true. When I was getting my forklift driver's license, completely surrounded by a load of guys I'd never met, just you show up and you do the class and you're going to go and get your license. And that's great. But the instructor was giving me a really hard time, and one of the guys could see it, and he came up and he said, "Are you all right?" And I went, "Yeah." And then that was the end of it. But he did give, he cared enough to come over, and make sure that I was all right. I hadn't said anything, I didn't do anything, you just instantly picked up on, that guy's not okay, go and make sure he's all right. This idea that sort of friendliness and togetherness doesn't happen between guys, it's not true. We instantly do get together and stick together. We just don't try and force an emotional reaction out of each other.
Well, I think that one of the differences in the way that men show affection and friendship is it's vastly different than the way women do it. When women ask men to be affectionate and emotional, it's because they want you to listen to them. It's not because they want to actually deal with your emotions as an equal person. Right?
Yeah.
So what they're really asking you to do is to be emotional enough to listen to their feelings. And when it comes to yours, they shut you down. So we need to get to a point where emotions aren't considered masculine or feminine. They're considered to be a human quality. And how it expresses itself isn't masculine or feminine. It's individualistic.
Well, yeah, I sort of agree with you on that one, especially the individual point. But it's not wrong to notice general trends. It's not wrong to pretend to notice that men generally behave one way and women generally behave another way. It's just when you start saying, and then you must because you happen to be born one of those things. That's when it becomes a problem. It's not wrong to notice general trends. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily all of society picking on you and saying this is the way it should be.
Right. Well, I've noticed with guys, like I worked in the film industry for a while, so I worked in an industry where people are more emotive than usual when it comes to actors, right, and actor mentality. And there was a particular actor I worked with who would get into a fit state, and all I'd have to do to calm him down, and they didn't know what I did, all I did was go up to him and say, how you doing? You okay? Just like you said, right? Yeah. And that acknowledgement that I understood he was having an emotion was enough for him to just kind of go, yeah, I'm good, because somebody noticed and somebody cares.
No, exactly. Well, you mean you treated a human being like a human being and you got a positive reaction? I'm shocked. I can't believe that's what happened. But also, I mean, a lot of this stuff I sort of struggle with because it doesn't tend to get focused my way. It's just a way that I've noticed a lot of guys are treated. If I like something that's seen as feminine, no one gives me any grief for it. Whereas other guys seem to get it in spades, and you just can't. Why are you picking on this guy? When I go and flirt with a girl, no one gives me any crap for it. That's just fine. When the next guy does it, he's suddenly seen as creepy, and I'm sort of struggling. What did he do that I didn't do, or what's missing here? And it's just a genuine whether or not they like you. And if people happen to like you, then it's fine. You do what you want. It's whatever. But if not, then all of these things, and it's particularly insidious when it comes to the way we treat guys, because then there's like this sexual threat.
Right. Well, women don't decide if a guy's creepy until they stop to sexually assess the guy who's giving them attention, of whatever nature that attention is, right? You can't actually, no woman ever finds a guy creepy unless they've sexually assessed that guy first.
Yeah, no.
Because if they're attractive or if they're somewhat, in line with whatever the woman's looking for, then it's not creepy, then it's, great.
Yeah, exactly. If he's attractive to you specifically, then it's fine. Or if you're friends, then it's fine. It's not creepy. It's not awkward. Well, yeah, exactly. But also what the guy Scribble was saying is very true. I was in a situation where a guy said that a big group of us together, and the guy said, I don't mind that I'm not masculine. And a girl I used to date just sort of looked at him and was like, yeah, but the girls care. And it was just true. It was just, it's this, everyone sort of went quiet because it's different when a woman says it. If a guy had said it, it'd be like, oh, but because a woman had said it, it was, hang on a second, there's actually some truth to it. When he behaves in a feminine way, he's not getting any respect for it.
Yeah. And it sort of ties back into that idea that women can't handle vulnerability in men because they don't have their own strength. Like they don't have a conception, and feminism doesn't really give it to them. It only gives them more of this weak vessel bullshit of being acted upon, victim consciousness identity shit. But I think I wanted to just say something about what Diana said with us just seeing it as individual. The reality is that men probably and women will probably emote differently. They'll probably express their emotions differently in general trends and also process them differently. But maybe what I think she was trying to get at, and she can tell me, she can beat me over the head if I'm wrong, but what she's trying to get at is that we shouldn't be judging people based on how they choose to express their emotions. And part of that is not judging men as less masculine for expressing their emotions in the way that they do. You know, and almost every expression of emotion in men seems to be rendered taboo, you know, unless it benefits a woman somehow. Anyway, thank you so much for the call. We do have to move on. And I'm going to move on now to very interesting name, Ghost True Capitalist Radio. Hello, Ghost True Capitalist Radio. Hi.
How you doing?
I was doing okay.
One thing I do want to, discuss is that I'm a closet brony. I'm not joking. I know people are like, what? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not joking. This is for real. I think Fluttershy is cute. I love Pinkie Pie. I'm bronified. And that's about it.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for that. And I'm glad we could offer you a forum for coming out of the closet. Now we're going to go to Jake. Jake, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi.
Yep.
I'm Jake from Ohio. I just want to say I love the show. I'm here all the time. I really like it.
Thanks.
Oh, we're glad to have you here.
So I wanted to talk about how some people use this show or My Little Pony to cope with it. One of my best friends, Anson, he actually suffers from autism, and he actually uses this show to be more social. He goes on an image board called I think like 2K, maybe, I don't know, 3 channel, something like that. I don't know. But sorry, I spilled Arizona iced tea all over me. Wow, I'm sweating really bad. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Fuck. Yeah.
Okay,
are you
Jake,
okay?
If you can get yourself together, we'll bring you back online when that happens. I'm going to move now to John. John. Hello, John. What did you want to say tonight? Hi.
Hi. I want to let you know that 4chan is doing what they do best, and they know about this, and you can go look at the My Little Pony board on 4chan, and they're intentionally trolling you. I believe that at least 4 people who've called. Okay, just, all right, do with that what you will.
Yeah, they're a couple weeks late.
Yeah, the reality is that, you know what, trolls are fun too, and they're bringing up...
I think what you're doing is like really important. So I just want you to be able to use your time most efficiently. I just wanted to make sure you knew. So.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that the thing is, I think a lot of those people were bringing up, even if they were trolls. What's funny about that they were bringing up and expressing things that are real, which is sort of funny because it's like a reverse troll. They're actually coming on. They're giving expression to something that already exists that is a truth. And you know what? That's a benefit to everyone. So troll on.
Okay.
Do you have anything else to bring up?
No, I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Enjoy. Continue.
Well, thanks for telling
the
us.
warning.
What's more annoying to a troll than that you literally take them seriously and respond to them as if they really mean what they're saying, right? And why wouldn't we on this show?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here for. We're here to respond to people what they're saying, and like this is a very emotional topic. So if somebody comes on and starts talking about his experience of it, and it sounds legitimate, what do we lose? Like, is that really a successful troll? I mean, it's essentially become a performance art piece, giving voice to the voiceless. So I'm afraid that that's not a really very successful troll. Anyway, let's move on.
We offer them, like in true brony fashion, we offer them tolerance and love.
Yes, tolerance and love. Jonah Goldberg. Hello, Jonah.
Hello. I represent...
okay, we're getting a lot of feedback on you, so if you can control that, we will come back to you. Zargi Studios. Welcome.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Glad to be on. So there was one thing that I thought of to talk about, and that's how males are treated in the show, at least in the first episode. I actually posted a time link to the first episode of the YouTube, and I noticed this is actually something that's supposedly supposed to be a girls' show, where the males are actually treated like normal people generally, although they don't have a big role generally because My Little Pony is stereotypically a girls' show. That's what they were trying to aim for. I think they got that very, very right in general. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was the the way that the Brony community is really seriously accepting. Like, there's not a huge amount of of hate in it. They're seriously, surprisingly accepting.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Like, it's a show that's all about being accepting and tolerant. I would be surprised if something, less of them, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they must like the show for a reason. That must resonate with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. And another thing that you were talking about earlier, the adult stuff, the pornography. One of the things that I wanted to point out was this didn't really exist with the previous generations. And I think the reason that there's so much of it now is that adults actually do have a reason to like the show. It's a good show. So it's actually something that's taken seriously in that respect. I will say that the previous caller, Ghost, was the hardest I have laughed in a while. I mean, seriously. But other than that, I just I really like your show. I think you guys are really doing an awesome job, and I wanted to thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for listening and calling in and giving us our thoughts and also thanking us.
As far as the pornography stuff goes with it too, it's just like 4chan is a big part of what made this brony thing so popular, and 4chan is also a factory, and if it exists, there's porn of it. So that there's porn of it doesn't really say anything about bronies in general. It just says something about 4chan
or humans.
Yeah, more of humans.
Yeah, it's just a human quality to create. and women are no exception. Like, it's just a human thing.
I'd make porn of it if I was a brony.
Okay,
and
Simon.
I'm considered a chick.
Hello,
yes,
Simon.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh,
hi.
Okay. Yes, thank you for having me. Let me see. All right, so I guess we're talking about how it's acceptable or not acceptable for men to have feelings and whatnot, and how it relates to My Little Pony. I also want to relate that to what's inside the show My Little Pony itself. Now, the show was created by a woman named Lauren Foss, and she's actually a bit of a feminist. She's actually a fairly mild feminist, really. Like, when she created the show, basically one of the goals she had was that she wanted there to be a variety of characters, or a variety of female characters, so that girls watching the show could just think that they could grow to be whatever they wanted. And so they had tomboy characters, and they had feminine characters, and that sort of thing. Now, there was, after the show had been running for a few years, there was a fan favorite poll, And what was interesting, though, is that after all the fanfaring was done, we had Fluttershy being the main victory of the poll. And I don't know if you know who Fluttershy is. I know you've watched it.
I have a Fluttershy plushie. I have a Fluttershy plushie, so I know who she is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that, given a choice, though, that Fluttershy is actually a fairly feminine pony. I'd say she's the most feminine out of the six. But what's also interesting is that how that femininity of hers is treated. I suppose the best example for it is that there was a show, I think it was the beginning of the second season, where there was like a demon sort of called Discord. Now, Discord, what he was doing is that he was going around to each of the ponies, and he was sort of like tempting them, like using their own personality.
Okay. Simon, stop for a second. I'm going to need you to get closer to your mic or speak up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So,
that's a lot better. Continue with your story.
Okay, thank you. So, beginning of second season, there was a character named Discord who was sort of like a demon. And what he was doing is that he was going around and he was tempting all of the ponies, according to the personality. So, Applejack, who's an honest pony, Discord would show her something that she couldn't stand, and so she was forced to lie to herself about it. Now, when it came to Fluttershy, though, Discord would go up to Fluttershy and say, "Hey, you're sort of weak and helpless, and all your friends know that." Now, Fluttershy's response was actually very interesting. She said, "Well, that's okay. I actually am weak and helpless, and I'm grateful that my friends understand that." And when I heard that line of dialogue, I was thinking to myself, well, wow, that's actually an interesting line of dialogue to be putting in front of kids in a kids show. So when they're showing like a variety of attitudes that you can aspire to be, they're not kidding. Like, you can even be like a fairly weak and helpless person and have that be accepted. And it's kind of interesting that when you think about that, say Fluttershy is accepted as like a weak, helpless character, but that's not necessarily true for the guys who are watching the show. And I guess that's all I wanted to say, really. I did have one more question, though. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on what Fluttershy was like in the spirit of what I was saying.
Well, I think I could answer that. I mean, if Della or Diana want to chime in, of course, but I think that Fluttershy might be underselling herself somewhat, because it seems like that when the chips are down, she does tend to spine up a bit, or at least she has a quality that that she can assert herself. It's just a lot more of a passive way. So I don't know if she's completely defined by being completely and utterly weak and submissive. But even the fact that she would be honest about it is quite different than I would guess a typical hypo agent would be. I mean, for example, if feminists were reasonably honest about the fact that they just wanted to be weak and submissive women, instead of trying to be something that they're not and then blaming men for it, I think that would be a step up. I don't know. Does that answer your question? Do you need something?
That's okay. I was just wanted to get your opinion or your thoughts.
I'd say there's a time and place for everything, right? Being weak and submissive might suit some circumstances and it won't suit others. But on the other hand, there's some people who are leaders and there's some people who are followers, and the world needs both of them. So be whatever you want to be. Who fucking cares? Just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
and the whole weak and helpless thing. That takes me right back to the earlier part in the show, Diana, when you were talking about how feminists were some of the first complainers about the show, when they complained about the show before they complained about the Bronies. And one of their complaints was that the show was ableist. And you can't very well call the show ableist if there's a character who admits to being weak and helpless and basically says, I'm glad my friends are able to be understanding about my weakness and my helplessness. That's not exactly a very ableist attitude.
No, it's it actually models something interesting that I think is sort of valid to model, which is gratitude. Like gratitude itself is a strength. When you're capable of being grateful for other people's strengths, that actually is something that is in itself a difficult thing to do. It can be extremely you have to really swallow your pride, right? And it's an element of, I would call, moral courage to recognize your limitations and be grateful for those people who can help you where you have limitations, and we all have limitations. So in some ways, she's modeling a different kind of strength. But thank you, Simon, for the call, and we do hope you call in again. I am going to go to... the dashboard is full of trolls. Let's see if I can find one that isn't. All right, Sid.
Oh.
Hello, Sid.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Oh, hi. Is this Girl Rights What, Karen?
No, this is Typhon Blue, Allison.
Oh, hey. I just want to say it's an honor and privilege to be speaking to you. And first off, I just want to, I guess, say I'm brony in the sense that I watch the show. I mean, I don't really participate in the fandom or the internet community, and I certainly don't go to the conventions. But I watch the show. I guess I like it, and I guess that makes me a brony. Then I can call myself a brony, just like if I like the show, Dexter, and they decide to call themselves Dexterites, then cool, I'm a Dexterite too. But just because I'm a Dexterite doesn't mean I like everything in the show. And just because in Dexter, the two characters, who's his wife and his sister, Rita and Deborah, they're just absolute bitches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are you still there?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, point out what you could call the utter hypocrisy of, how there's a certain feminist in the vein of, say, for example, Anita Sarkeesian, who they talk about this conspiracy, there's like a patriarchy that's out to, suppress women, not just in video games, but say, for example, in cartoons. Like, say, for example, if we flip the script and we take a traditionally or stereotypically a male cartoon like Transformers or G.I. Joe, correct? And and they find out that there's little girls watching them. The reaction isn't gonna be, oh my God, we have little girls watching. Quick, let's make girl Transformers. We need to parent the girls. In that dumbass movie they made of G.I. Joe, they had to make that one really Mary Sue-like chick. The chick who was the hero's girlfriend, but was the villain for half in the movie, committing absolutely atrocious acts, but then, being redeemed simply because she's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's like we see time and time again when, women enter the role or women want to do something traditionally masculine, like, watch Transformers or G.I. Joe, the reaction's always, pander, we have to, make sure that they're happy. But yet, in the case of My Little Pony, the reaction you see is completely different. You got Fox News, a mainstream news organization, is saying, bronies, they're fags, they're, pedophiles living in their mom's basement. There's all kinds of insults like that you never see that, if you flip the script, MSNBC wouldn't be talking about, girls, who watch Transformers and like, G.I. Joe. They wouldn't say that they're, evil dykes.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I thank you for your call. Thank you for your thoughts. I would agree with that. In fact, I have an example from my own life. My mother-in-law is a huge fan of football, and I don't think anybody is going to shame her for that. And it's not a traditionally feminine pursuit at all. And she is, there's absolutely no shaming for the female fans of any sport. And yet sports are considered traditionally masculine. We don't talk about how female sports fans must be, bull dyke, pedo chicken hawks who, live in their parents' attic, whatever. There is that double standard. And I see Diana wants to talk.
Yeah, I was basically you started to cover the same topic. It was just, if women are interested in male, stereotypical male activities, it's encouraged. It's like, yeah, you go, girl, you do that thing, you join that hockey team, and you make them accept you on a male hockey team if you're a female. But when guys want to do the opposite and they want to join in with something that's considered feminine, then it's the completely opposite level of support, saying, what's wrong with you? This isn't cool. There's obviously something psychologically wrong with you. And it's really interesting how, in an attempt to achieve a balance between the masculine and feminine representation of yourself in life, women are encouraged to be more masculine and men are discouraged from being more feminine, until it comes down to you should have more feelings. And what having more feelings is completely undefined, right? When you show feelings in a way that's supportive of women, it's great. When you show feelings in a way that's just supportive of having feelings, it's bad.
It's almost like it's not okay for men to have a feminine side or men to in any way be feminine. It's more like it's just not okay for men to be. And as soon as, like you said, as soon as their purpose or their actions don't suit women or don't serve women, all of a sudden they're going to get judged for it. I wanted to point out back to the discussion about watching TV shows that are targeted toward the opposite sex. And the last caller had mentioned when G.I. Joe's creators found out they had girls in the audience, and they changed the show. They added female characters. And this is something that is a pretty consistent thing. Whenever it's noticed that women are there or girls are there, that women show up, it's just assumed that the environment has to be changed to suit us. And in reality, if we're already there, it's because we liked the environment the way it was. I grew up watching superhero cartoons and just mostly boys stuff, Transformers and stuff like that with the guys in my neighborhood. There weren't a lot of girls my age. I didn't need female characters added. But then at the other way around, when guys get into something that is targeted toward women, it's almost treated like they're invaders from the outside. And it's almost like they're invaders from the outside, and instead of where they want to change the environment to suit women, it's almost like they're in there, they're being treated as if they're asking to change the environment when they're not. But anyway, back to you, Allison.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. Karen, who isn't here tonight, even though she's dead to us, we will mention her name. She did a very good video on it called, I believe, something female hypoagency. Can one of you supply the title? I am totally shit with titles tonight. The Scourge of Female Hypoagency. Okay, I will put this in the link in the low bar when this is uploaded in YouTube, so people who look at this show can know what I'm talking about. But we have to move on. It's time again to end the show and to give thanks to our listeners and our callers. For those of you who are first-time listeners, you can access the YouTube archive of our shows through our website under the heading Archive. The website is at honeybadgerbrigade.com. That's honeybadgerbrigade.com. And don't forget to check out our store. Our store is at www.cafepress.com/honeybadgerbrigade. You can also access our store from our website. Again, our store features Honey Badger-themed items for purchase and also our rape culture mascot, Mr. Tentacles. Mr. Tentacles, 8 times the raping. Thanks also to my co-hosts for always keeping it real. Thanks to Phil for animating our ad every week, to Europa for his amazing art, and to James for keeping everything running smoothly. Also thanks to AVFM, A Voice for Men, for hosting our voice, and to Reddit for giving us a sticky every week until we resolve the issue of not being able to advertise on the Men's Rights Reddit. And thanks to 4chan for trolling us. It's a fucking honor. Tune in next week. Same Badger time, same Badger station.
This is Honey Badger Radio, reminding you to take the red pill.